Hey everyone, it's Callum from Cagefront here, and we are back with another Fighter Spotlight video, this time in the heavyweight division with a top flight newcomer in Rizvan Kuniev, who is coming from Dana White's Contender Series straight into a top 5 heavyweight fight with Curtis Blaydes in less than a month on the Henry Cejudo versus Yadong fight night that's happening on the 22nd of Feb 2025. So why is Rizvan Kuniev getting a top 5 opportunity straight on his UFC debut? Well, he's definitely not lacking any confidence. After securing his UFC contract, he asked to fight both CIRYL GANE and Jailton Almeida back to back the same night, and stated he would not even need to train to beat the both of them on the same night.
CIRYL GANE or Almeida, I'm ready. I don't need to train to fight these guys. I'm being brutally honest with you. I'm ready. And I am even ready to fight both of them same night without a training camp on a week's or day's notice. That's how I'm confident.
Are the matchmakers just liking the noise that he's making, or is the heavyweight division lacking this much, or is he just that good? So Rizvan Kuniev has 15 pro career fights and has fought in multiple organizations, mainly lower tier organizations on the regional scene. But as well as that, he's fought on Eagle FC and was an undisputed champion. He's fought in the PFL and of course the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series twice now. And he is currently 32 years old and fights out of Dagestan, Russia. And he has a record of 12-2-1. So that's 6-0 with KOs, 2-0 with submissions, and 4-2 in decisions. And most notably, he has one no contest. And this is most notable because it came against his toughest opponent in Renan Ferreira in the PFL, which he beat him by a clear decision as a -265 favorite, which ultimately did land him another shot on Dana White's Contender Series to eventually get the contract he has now. However, his win against Renan Ferreira was overturned because he was one of 10 PFL fighters who failed a post-fight drug test early in PFL's 2023 season. But Rizvan's was one of the worst when it came to testing out of all of those guys. He tested positive for 4 different illegal substances in that fight. So this has definitely tainted his name across the MMA space. But ultimately, you can't deny the guy's skill set. Aside from the no contest, Kuniev is on an 11-fight win streak, and he's finished 7 fighters within it. Now, physically, Kuniev is definitely a force to be reckoned with. He doesn't have like the greatest reach or anything, 76 inches of reach, but he has a good leg reach at 44 inches, which is good for leg kicks and teep kicks, and he is 6'4", so a pretty decent height. But most importantly is his weight translation with his speed as a natural wrestler. In his first Dana White's Contender Series fight, he had to cut down from 300 odd pounds to make the heavyweight limit, which is ridiculous. And he's not even slow.
Two gentlemen both coming in at 6 feet 4 inches tall, and you can see Kuniev had to lose 66 pounds to get down to the number for this fight.
That's how crazy that is. He's actually a pretty fast striker and quick on his entries, but most importantly, we haven't really even seen any stamina issues from this guy. However, with almost any fighter, there are holes in their game that can be exploited. And with one of his losses that he does have, we can dissect that a little bit to really exploit those. But the other loss that he has, there's literally just no record of the fight, which was against former UFC fighter Justin Willis, who, funnily enough, lost to Curtis Blaydes in the last fight of his career in 2019. So that's a bit of a full circle moment. And he also initially lost to former UFC fighter Darko Stosic, who only lost to top flight competition like Yuri Prochazka, Jamal Hill, and Big Daddy Gaziv. But what that fight showed is holes defensively when it comes to the ground game, which I'll get to later in the video. But I think he honestly won that fight 29-28 anyway. So even though I think he actually won that fight, it's also hard to translate the holes in his game from then to now, as Kuniev, when he lost that fight, he was only 22 years old. He hasn't lost since he was 22 to 23 years old, and he hasn't lost in almost 10 years now. Now, striking is always going to be pretty evident as a heavyweight, and Rizvan Kuniev is an absolute bulldozer. He loves the forward pressure and creating those phone booth-based exchanges, just balls to the wall, just absolute swinging for the fences. And he is very dangerous when he gets in those close quarter exchanges because of the precision that he has inside the clinch. He stays locked in, wraps the elbows around the guard, wraps tight hooks around the guard, and runs good knees up the middle. And then when we even branch out to boxing and kickboxing range, the guy is good at cutting down the range of larger opposition like Renan Ferreira, and utilizes very nice looping hooks and overhands when he's barraging forward. And he doesn't allow the opposition to reset after he goes for a flurry. He just clinches straight onto them after the flurry instead of backing off them to allow them to reset, which is why he is such an exhausting fighter to go against, especially when backed up against the cage. And also at range, he also has very nice teeps. He's got nice outside leg kicks, but I will say, he does throw himself into exchanges a bit needlessly sometimes, which counter strikers like CIRYL GANE and Tom Aspinall could heavily capitalize on. But looking straight back at the positives, this guy even has underrated athleticism, as at the start of the finishing sequence he had against Anthony Hamilton in Eagle FC for the title, he clipped the guy with a spinning heel kick at the start of that sequence. And looking at this guy physically, you just think he would not have the athleticism to do it. But if Chris Barnett is anything to go by, then that's just, you know, straight out the window. And he's been able to get these finishes fairly consistently, as he's currently hitting at a 78% strike accuracy and almost lands 6 significant strikes per minute. So when he can consistently apply that pressure and is able to start teeing off, he's a nightmare to deal with, especially when he strings those 3 to 4 piece combinations together against the fence. That's where he ends most of his fights. And I'm very confident he's one of the more dangerous heavyweights in the UFC already when it comes to boxing and especially offensive clinch-based exchanges. Now, aside from throwing himself needlessly into exchanges sometimes where he can definitely overcommit, I'm not overly confident from the small snippets that I have seen of him being on the back foot. He only knows one direction, and that is forward. Aside from Renan Ferreira, the huge problem is that he hasn't faced strong enough opposition to actually place him on the back foot, because he absorbs less than 2 strikes per minute, which either presents great strike defense, insanely dominant wrestling like an Islam Makhachev, or the fighter has not faced high enough level competition to where they can challenge him. And that's where I think he fits into that category. And that's where there are a lot of questions are for him, is how he faces the higher level opposition, that higher level quality like Curtis Blaydes. Ultimately, with his striking, I'm liking him against more than a few heavyweights in the UFC right now. Now, it would partially be a sin if a Dagestani fighter didn't have at least a smidge of wrestling in their locker. But even though Kuniev more so prefers the striking, he definitely has offensive wrestling abilities as well. He's very active, as he shoots on average around 3 takedowns a fight, and he makes them count because he has a 75% takedown accuracy. He's successful because he chains his takedown attempts well to take the back and then drag them to the ground. And he's also got great single leg entries, either being able to dump his opponent with pure strength or just tossing them off their posted leg and making them lose their balance. His strength as well is a huge positive for him, especially when he secures body lock takedowns. And when he's on the ground, he's very good at distributing his weight and has made the opposition that he has faced already struggle a lot while he has top control, just purely with that strength and positioning. Now, defensively, he showed amazing takedown defense against Cunha, especially the single leg defense, and has always had decent sprawling capabilities as well. However, only until recently he's shown a fairly decent scrambling game from his back in attempts to get to his feet. However, he is not the strongest at maintaining defensive positions off of his back. So fighters who can transition well on top, like your Tom Aspinalls and your Curtis Blaydes, would most likely be able to exploit that weakness there. But offensively, against a fair few of these heavyweights who don't have ground games, I'm liking him in those matchups for sure. Now, the grappling is more so an unknown for him, obviously in comparison to the striking and the wrestling, because of the power and strength he does have. And, you know, the grappling isn't going to be his favorite option because he's just a big lug of a heavyweight. But we do have some data on his offense and defense when it comes to the grappling. Now, offensively, he hit a nasty standing guillotine against Anthony Hamilton for that title back in 2022 in Eagle FC, to the point where he was using that pure strength to lift him completely off the ground and make him tap. And then earlier in 2019, he got his first pro submission, submitting Navid Yadigari by a rear naked choke, but there isn't any video footage of that. So we do have a bit there, but mostly we can see that he's forcing that choke with that pure strength. Now, defensively, there isn't much we have seen on tape, but he did manage to defend an arm triangle and an arm bar from Renan Ferreira very well. He maintained composure and was able to slip out of it pretty seamlessly. But aside from that, we just don't have much. But unless it's Tom Aspinall or Jailton Almeida or like Sergey Spivak, I don't see the submission threat being likely in any matchups anyway. I only see those three fighters are going to be able to finish him in that department. But aside from that, when it comes to that submission offensive threat, I think that he can push it against anyone except those three, anyone that is adept with that grappling. So ultimately, Rizvan Kuniev is a high pressure style striker with good boxing combinations and great clinch based strikes. And his key is mixing the pressure with his strength, which definitely assists his wrestling game, which he presents great body locks and single leg trips, and he has good takedown defense as well, with that underrated athleticism, which allows him to sprawl and balance very well, but also gives him the tools like the spinning heel kicks to utilize as well. So he definitely has some underrated, dangerous tools there as well. And he also has very underrated stamina, especially for his frame. He showed that very well against Santos on Dana White's Contender Series. Santos stunned him a couple of times at the start of the fight, pushed him on the back foot, landed very nice shots, but Kuniev dug through, consistently wrestled, applied very good forward pressure from start to the finish, and did not look fatigued at all in that third round. Now, the elephant in the room for him, which the MMA space has honed in on him at the moment for it, is obviously him getting a top 5 debut fight instantly against Curtis Blaydes, which is easily the biggest fight of his life. And if he wins, it opens a plethora of options, not just for him, but it opens a plethora of options for matchmaking in the heavyweight division, which is desperately needed because it is the weakest men's division. Now, from what I've seen, most people are counting him out against Curtis Blaydes, which I do understand to a degree because of Curtis Blaydes' resume. But come fight day, I don't think it's going to be as black and white for Blaydes as people believe, because Kuniev, he's strong, he's powerful, got good wrestling, got good boxing combinations. This guy is definitely a contender, but he just needs to make a career turnaround cleanly and prove that he is a top contender simply without juicing, because that so far has tarnished his career. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video, and there will be a fighter spotlight tier list video on Rizvan Kuniev versus the top 15 heavyweights next week, so stay tuned for that. And please like, comment, subscribe. It really goes a long way for the channel. And please just check out the video on the screen if you want to see more MMA based content, and I will catch you in the next one.